Goedemiddag en welkom terug. Tijdens het middagprogramma van deze eerste dag Vlaams-Nederlandse Havendagen gaan we kijken naar waar de samenwerkingen echt plaatsvinden. Of dat de individuele belangen toch te veel botsen. Om 2 uur gaan de CEO's van de 4 grootste zeehavens hierover met elkaar aan deze tafel in debat. Maar eerst gaan we kijken naar Europa, want het is ook belangrijk dat de havens hun economische positie weten te behouden. Hoe kijkt de Europese Commissie hiernaar? En dat gesprek voeren we dit komende half uur in het Engels vanwege de volgende internationale gasten. Daniël, lid van het Kabinet Frans Timmermans, en met Magda Kopczynska van DG Move. Welcome to the both of you. Daniel, to start with you, you were closely involved with Frans Timmermans for the Fit for 55 package, and that will have a huge impact on everything we know for the coming years. But what will be the biggest impact on the port?
Yeah, I think that for people who have spoken to me already before, I'm a big fan of ports. I come from a port city myself, from Rotterdam, so really grew up with it. And always when I cross the bridge, I go back to my parents. The Van Brienenoordbrug, I always think if the port is at work, then the society is at work. And that is very much the challenge that has always been there. The challenge for the port really to be that gateway to our society, a gateway to our society in the transport that we need in the future, but also the big energy transition that is coming our way with the climate package. So the big challenge is the same, the port as the gateway really to our society, but of course the climate package and the climate ambitions have made part of that, more ambitious.
Yeah, and do you think most ports will see the Fit for 55 package as a chance to get some money from Brussels to innovate and to do all and to ensure that they will be climate neutral eventually, or that it will make sure that the companies in the harbour region have to invest themselves?
Yeah. I think that the Green Deal, as with many sectors, and we are fully aware of certain of the particular challenges that faces port and also the transport that arrives there, is really both. It's an ambitious target, and with some of our proposals that particularly have relevance for the ports, such as Fuel Maritime, we set a framework. We believe that framework is ambitious but realistic. But of course, people will look at it and it's what do we do right now? But at the same time, the ports also have a massive opportunity out of the Green Deal, I would say, and also to attract lots of private investment even. The Green Deal is really about a big transition and also a big energy transition and a transport transition. And there's really one place in the world where you can think of where a lot comes together. Offshore wind coming on the shore, hydrogen production of the future, transport, multimodal transport happening, industry that needs hydrogen for clean industry, circular business models, all of that comes together in the port. With our taxonomy, that is sort of like our book of for people working in the financial sector, what is a green investment? Lots will be in there. So there's really a big opportunity there if the ports can succeed also in, striving to be the best, but also working together in a vision on the energy transition, they can get a lot out of that package and from investors, I would say.
Yeah, so the biggest impact will be that they transition from supporting cargo and mainly have their focus on cargo to supporting the energy transition.
Yeah, it's always awkward for any Dutchman to tell other people what to do, but that would be my friendly advice to really think about the big picture and this energy transition and see a bit, despite the fact you mentioned it already, you might not agree on everything, but a common vision and bringing that to the table and making your voice heard, which could become a bit stronger than it is right now, making that voice heard could really help in attracting that investment to really make that all of that happen.
Yeah. Magda, you are Director for Waterborne Transport in the European Department for Mobility and Transport, DG Move, people know it by that name. How do you see the cooperation between ports on this topic?
Maybe just one thing to add in response to your question, whether ports should transition from looking at cargo into looking at energy. Well, no, ports should always be about moving goods and people, because this is their core business. That's why they are the hubs. This is their raison d'être. That's how they make money. Okay, many ports, also many ports that are present here, also make money from businesses that are present in those ports, and they are actually industry hubs. And one of the things that we have been talking to ports for already some time is to, like Daniel said, to have a bigger to take a bit of a step back, think holistically and think long term. So don't look only on the transport side of your activity, look also at the industries that are located and think what needs to happen so that you're becoming not only a consumer of green energy, but you're also a producer of green energy. That's where the hydrogen and wind power comes, and whatever other new solutions and technologies we'll have in the future. And Fit for 55 is, of course, a proposal that goes much beyond transport. Sorry for stealing your line, Daniel. But it is looking across the entire economy. In terms of ports cooperation, okay, I come from the European Commission. I need to make a statement that cooperation is fine as long as it doesn't abuse competition rules. But everybody knows it, and I know it's not the case. But let's not forget that ports, on the one hand, have to compete among themselves to attract new businesses, new cargo being brought, new passenger services. But they can also cooperate, and maybe they should, because we are really talking about a large-scale transition that the entire European economy is facing. It's not just something that will happen over 5 years. We have the targets of carbon neutrality for Europe 2050. I mean, this is the time horizon we are talking about. So if they can work together, learn from one another, share solutions that work, then it cannot be but applauded.
And on what topics should they specifically work together? What is the first step?
Oh, I would love to hear the answer to that question from Port themselves, because I'm sure Port have very, very strong ideas.
Are there any good examples in Europe at the moment? Maybe not Rotterdam and Antwerp, but maybe in the South or East Europe?
Well, I think ports are trying to build projects together where, for example, developing new ideas or new concepts for, you said, energy production, but also how the organization of the port will work. For those projects, we do have European funding. We have had European funding. I'm sure the question about money will come at some point, so I'm just jumping ahead. But it is important that they find projects where actually they can develop similar solutions that will work in both. If there's I think that there is a tricky issue about that cooperation because, and I really mean it, every port in Europe is unique. I mean, because of geography, because of historical tradition, because of how they are enshrined in the local city region, because of the politics of the country where they exist. So they all will have their specificities, but I can imagine that if one port decided to, and many ports do those days, to put their money into investing in hydrogen, then possibly discussing it between different ports, how do we do it? Is there a possibility that part of the infrastructure can maybe at some point be shared? Because what we don't want is to have double spending, that, they build the same thing when that can be shared, provided competition rules.
Yeah, but energy in the end will be a free market in Europe, I presume. Also the market for hydrogen, a lot of private investments, public investments, but also private investments. So I can imagine that there is a thin line between cooperation on this level and competition. And
absolutely. But again, it's nothing new for ports, the question of competition rules in the EU, because that has always been a very important point that we have discussed. When we put the ports services regulation on the table a couple of years ago, the question of competition, what can be done, what cannot be done, has been also discussed with the ports. We have, when it comes to public support, because this is the other issue, which I know is very tricky occasionally in terms of what type of public support can be given to ports in different EU countries by national authorities. But we have had a long tradition of discussing with national governments in the EU, between the Commission and our competition colleagues dealing with competition policy, what can be done and what cannot be done and what will constitute public aid. But I mean, yes, it's part of our daily work and will continue to do so.
Yeah, because Daniel, the plan of Timmermans, let's call it like this, comes with a lot of budget, of course. What is the first thing that ports should invest in?
Well, I think that the Green Deal, like what you said, it comes with a large budget. Like there are public resources that are allocated there, but like the private investment is also really crucial. I think that the bulk of the Green Deal needs to actually be achieved with private investments. That's why we're so adamant on showing financial investors the direction, like, you know, to give them certainty. This investment, if you invest in this, that is really in line with the climate neutral future, so that's a safe investment for the longer term.
Is that decision already been made?
Yeah, there is like a first act of that, like you know, it's basically it is a very tall document. Magda van Move also like knows certain parts of it really well, and it's really like a checklist of different things to that meets those criteria. That is a safe long-term investment. I would always say that hydrogen is indeed one of these very safe long-term investments. We have to figure out later the year what role exactly it plays, that you need blue hydrogen in the interim period, and how do you move to the real hydrogen with electrolyzers from the wind farms and the renewables. That will all come, but it's in general like a safe direction to think in, and also like promising, I think, for many ports. And bringing all these different energy systems together, what we call with a bit of a geeky term, system integration, but really making sure that like you use the excess energy of a data center to heat also the industry next to it. That type of stuff is also really quite safe.
Yeah, and will it be a project initiated with a European vision, or is it mostly a national vision, or maybe sometimes even a regional vision?
It's a bit of a mixture of both. Like when you take hydrogen as an example, that's clearly like, you know, a very European, a pan-European priority to increase the mix of hydrogen, hopefully to 15% of our energy mix once we reach our climate neutral future. So that's clearly a common European vision. There's a big alliance underneath it, and people can have promising hydrogen projects and propose those. And then we have a look at, you know, what type of regulatory barriers we can take away, what type of bureaucracy we can take away, red tape, but also indeed like some funding is of course also like available there. And that's going really extremely well. Sometimes you know, I'm always amazed by the Green Deal. You start really also believing stuff because you're starting to see it already. Over 1,000 projects have tried to make that first list of our hydrogen lines, and it will be a tough job actually to make a choice out of them. Yeah. And this fall that first selection will come, but it's really taking off.
And are you talking total 1,000 or only ports projects? Or?
No, that's total.
Yeah, and have you seen?
My hope is that there will be a port there, but
have you seen already initiatives from ports?
Yeah, like my boss Frans Timmermans, I unfortunately couldn't be there because of the COVID restrictions, but he opened here in Antwerp the first multimodal hydrogen refueling terminal. That's an amazing thing to see, because that's really like where you see, indeed, as Magda said, core business transporting cargo, but let's think a bit about this with a really broad picture and make sure that we can use the hydrogen that will come on land and then have multiple transport modes use that. I think that was a very exciting thing, and he really liked that.
And will that be like a blueprint that the DG Move will provide to all ports to help them with that, or is it not so simple as it sounds?
I think it's not so simple, because it is also it depends how you understand the phrase that DG Move will provide a blueprint. In terms of sharing it as a good example, yes, but I know ports. So I like to think I know them well, and they are not always so willing to be told what to do. What I find extremely important is that we do agree on the objective, and there is now a strong push from all ports in the EU to go green. As I said, it will be complicated because different ports have different capacities, and more importantly, different countries have different capacities. And for that, I need to say one thing. You know, one of the big sources of funding nowadays is, of course, RRF, the recovery money that is coming to bring Europe out of the pandemic crisis. I know that ports have been pushing national governments to include some mention of future or investment into ports related to that specific funding, and it was extremely difficult to get national governments to do. And I think that is a heavy challenge for ports, but not only for them, to make sure that their needs and that what they want to do is recognized by national government.
What is the biggest obstruction in this?
Oh, I'm not going to speak for national governments. I cherish my work too much. but I think, you know, one can say that one of the reasons can be even the fact of success. Because if you look at COVID, ports actually managed COVID quite well, considering all the difficulties that happened, you know, the well-known story of Evergreen blocking container traffic worldwide for quite a while, congestion, delays that were not the fault of ports, that simply resulted from the situation as it was. And ports still managed, found the flexibility, found the ways to deal with that. So I think that's one of the difficulties, that, you know, ports are actually successful, and then, you know, I want to say regulators and politicians have a tendency to think if somebody works, don't touch it. But I hope that ports will be really outspoken in terms of their share in the contribution to the green objectives.
Yeah, and does Brussels see the transition to carbon neutrality? Do you look at the industrial complex around ports and the logistic, so the transport, so road transport and sea transport and so on? Do you look at them as two different challenges, or is it combined and one big challenge?
It would be interesting how Daniel responds to that and how I respond to that.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, like I would say it's like a dual and a bit of a twin challenge, actually, because we all know that, like, to fully decarbonize transport, and we know that, like, when it comes to maritime transport, it's the core business of the ports. You know, the pathway is a bit longer than for other technologies that we see. For cars, it's very easy to see where we're going the next decade.
No, I disagree, because passenger cars, yes, of course, but heavy freight duty cars, not so much. I think.
Yeah, that's why I also, like, indeed said the cars for the trucks. There's still a bit of a technology race that is very much open. But all of that, like, just shows, like, it's a dual challenge, because on the one hand we need to go to the transport of the future, and it's not only because Frans Timmermans wants it and the Green Deal wants it. At a certain point, the customers will want it, because with all the sustainable corporate governance and sustainable way of managing your company, people will start looking at their carbon footprint across their supply chain, and they will start looking also at the port. So it will become a commercial imperative, just like also from the cities around it. Like Rotterdam became quite an innovator in many areas, mainly because people didn't want to be congested on the roads, and wanted the air quality to improve. So it's a dual challenge. Like it's a separate challenge to decarbonize transport. When you look at the technologies that could be the end game of many of these transport modes, they all fit with the energy transition that we also need to do. You need to make sure that for electric cars you have a plan across your electricity network to cope with it. The same for hydrogen, the same for ammonia, all these other things that will be relevant for cargo going through our ports. So I agree with Magda that you know, I'm quite a stubborn person myself, and like port people are like practical people and a bit stubborn, and that's good, and makes people really true innovators. But sometimes it would also be good to once in a while, you know, when we can help, to not only ask for help when the problem has arisen, because I've noticed that already a bit before, that like, oh, now all of a sudden with this project we have this problem, and then it's often quite late to do something about it. So that's why this thinking a bit in advance, what the opportunities are in the ports, and having a bit of a vision of that, I think really could help, also with a bit of a voice, a strong voice in Europe.
So to summarize your answer, once we solve the energy transitions question mark, then transport will follow itself. Well,
like ideally it goes together, because an investment makes most sense. This multimodal terminal is really a prime example of what I mean. That is an investment, one project, but a multimodal refueling station. So it covers multiple challenges at the same time, and nobody will argue for throwing a lot of extra money at the different things if you can pool stuff and have a project like that. That is very promising. So together is the ideal answer. Yeah. So Magda, were you thinking the same, or maybe you have a different vision?
Well, I need to. Well, I think vision-wise we agree, but just one reminder for clarification. You know, when Paris Agreement was reached in 2015. All the sectors are covered except for aviation and maritime, because they are international ones, and it was recognized by the parties to the agreement that they need a separate pathway. Just to be very clear, that doesn't mean they are off the hook. That was never the intention, but it was left for the international organization ICAO and IMO for aviation and maritime to deal with that. Reason being that technologically those two transport modes are the most challenging ones. It's still not there in the wide scale for market uptake. with technologies tested, proven. It's happening. It's basically changing every 6 months. We move forward. I'm talking definitely for shipping because that's the sector I know better. On the other hand, all the other sectors have already been covered. Member states have the obligations under the Paris Agreement to decarbonize, to reach their targets. That's why your question about the industrial complex around the port and the ship side is in a slightly different situation in terms of level of advancement, but also the approach by countries. Because, ships calling at the port of Antwerp are not necessarily linked directly with the country of Belgium.
No,
so
mostly not.
Mostly not. So there is a different approach. Having said that, I do believe that with the Fit for 55 package, European Commission gave a very clear signal following on what has been promised by the President, by Vice President Timmermans, that every sector will have to contribute to the Green Deal. So shipping is definitely no longer off the hook. There are proposals directly addressing shipping. Let's see what happens once they are finalized by the Member States and the Parliament. So we will see that decarbonization that Daniel was talking about. And yes, we do need energy transition across the entire economy.
Yeah, because you mentioned it already, ocean freight is going a bit slow because there are no easy technical solutions.
But they are starting. We already have, and I'm not going to name companies, not to advertise them here, but there are companies that have made conscious decision. They go for investments in, dual engines for now, powered by methanol. And one of the big reasons for them to do it is exactly the customers. That's what you were saying. They are getting questions.
I know which company you're referring about, but
any ship on the water.
But I also know that methanol is not an easy solution because right now we don't even know how to make enough methanol. I read that the yearly production of methanol at the moment is not even enough to cover all the ships of this Danish company.
Thank you. Danish, which company can it be? But I think this is one of the challenges we have, and that's why in the approach, in the proposal that we put forward for maritime, we decided to go for something completely, we haven't done it before as the Commission, to push for creating a market with putting forward very clear demand that will need to come from shipping companies. It will take a while because we know, for example, those fuels are not there. We can discuss bio-LNG, how much bio-LNG is available at this moment, but we don't expect full transition in the next 5 years. We actually expect relatively complete transition by 2050 to create the market. But there needs to be a signal that this is coming. And more importantly, exactly the same approach, the same proposal is going to now be discussed in autumn in the International Maritime Organization, proposal put on the table by the EU Commission and EU member states, supported already by US, and we are hoping also by other countries, because we also know that for really effective decarbonization of shipping, we need to have a global solution.
Yeah, and what will...
Sorry, I can talk about forever.
I know, but I'm just curious, what kind of regulation can the shipping sector expect on this topic?
Well, they already know. We put forward a demand that starting from 2025, every 5 years, there will be an increasing demand there will be more stringent requirements for decreased content of carbon in the fuels used by ships. Basically, on an annual basis, ships will be checked where the fuels, the energy that they are using on board, that's what I should say, is getting greener and greener and greener with time. We're starting very low in 2025 because it's really a framework that we need to put in place that also will call for infrastructure for fuels. It will call for certification for fuels that are being bunkered to make sure that everything works.
In all European ports? In
all European ports, all ships calling at those ports, when the traffic is between EU ports and 50% when it's international, it doesn't matter. But one important thing, because that's important for ports, it also includes a mandatory requirement for the use of plug-in or for the use of zero-emission energy sources when ships are in ports. And that was something that ports were asking for. They were saying, we can't invest in OPS, onshore power supply, if nobody's using it. So that's why we turned back to ships and said, okay, you will have to use it, ports will have to install it. We are creating a matching supply and demand.
And aren't you afraid that shipping lines, for example, the big Chinese shipping lines would choose Felixstowe to deliver their cargo and then use only short sea ships which comply on the European regulations to move the cargo to Europe?
That's a very good question, and that's a very tricky question as well. We decided for now to go with a sort of halfway approach. So all the traffic between EU ports is covered, and if you're coming from outside the EU, 50%. So sort of 50% of your traffic is already covered. That's what we put forward for the Council and the Parliament. Let's see what they decide. But you know, I'm also hoping that with the changing climate in the IMO, with exactly the same approach presented to the IMO, we will end up with a similar solution at the global level, and then it all works. But I agree, it is an issue, but yeah, I mean, we need to start from somewhere.
Yeah, Daniel, are you afraid of the competition question between Europe and its surrounding countries like the UK?
No, I think that some of the points that Magda made are really the valid ones, and I totally agree with her. Like that this is just a sector and activity where you can't expect everything to happen tomorrow. As long as tomorrow you have a sense of the journey and you have a sense of like where you want to be. I think that the main benefit of the proposal, but if people would complain about it from competitors, they would call Magda, I think. But like to me, it seems that with this, it's an open approach. It's a target approach. You know, you need to reduce the carbon intensity of your fuels over time. With whatever technological solution. There are also many other things that maritime ships can still do, sail in different ways to cut their energy use and hence their emissions. So I think that an open approach is already quite something that should give a degree of comfort to people and not immediately have belligerent reactions to it. But we all know that global action is, of course, the best. And let's see a bit also the momentum that will come also out of Glasgow in general, because people will hopefully internationally increase climate ambition. And then if we have started in Europe with having a plan, then it could be a plan that inspires the rest.
Discussions in the IMO on the environmental issues have actually been moved to take place after Glasgow. So we very much hope that the push from Glasgow will also be there, because these are the same countries that speak of high ambition in the COP, and then they come to the IMO, and I hope they will sustain the ambition.
Yeah, but the IMO is not known for moving fast on this topic.
Yeah, but you know, shipping is not about moving fast. Shipping is about delivering cargo. So, you know, it doesn't have to be fast, it has to be delivered. And let's not underestimate that this is really a completely diverse composition, and you have very small countries, you have developing countries that really rely on maritime transport. I think one thing, and again, we need to find a solution. We need to find a solution in the context of the IMO, how to offer support to countries for which the transition will be really difficult economically. And I know that there are ideas, I know that there are, you know, some countries are thinking about it. We are looking what can be done from our side. I know that industry is thinking about it, but it's a complicated thing. I think we need to recognize that the level of development worldwide it's not as lucky as we are in Europe. Well, you know, so I mean, if we don't find an answer to that, we will not find an answer to decarbonization of shipping globally.
So to conclude this session, a question for the both of you. In a few minutes on this table, all the CEOs of the biggest ports in the Netherlands and Belgium will be on your seat. What will be your most important advice to them? What can they do tomorrow?
Oh no.
Ladies first.
Oh, I didn't. Seriously, I didn't prepare an answer to that. But I will say, I mean, think long term, but also think European, and take advantage of the fact that you are part of Europe, where there's a sufficient level of ambition, there's sufficient level of financial support, maybe not as high as everybody wants, but don't forget that. What's the word? You can go fast on your own, but you can go far when you go in a group. So I think that would be my message to the ports. Don't forget you are part of European ports.
So work together and make use of everything Europe has to provide.
Yes.
We can put it on the towel.
Even nicer.
Daniel.
Yeah, like I think that CEOs are like people that think quite broad in general, and also like dare to have a bold vision. So that's my advice. Dare to be bold, and dare to also indeed think about what can I also do as a producer of this energy, and how can I make have a vision for the energy transition. And my second advice is like stubbornness is good, but if you need help from us, then don't be stubborn. Overly stubborn.
Yeah, and what do you
He
mean
just
by help?
offered it. Wow.
Do you mean financial help, or are you referring to something else?
No, I think that when CEOs of ports like have a very good plan where the two transitions really come together in one place, you're not only talking about like the basket of measures that we have in the transport fleet. You talk about having access to everything that we offer for the big energy transition. I think there's a massive opportunity there.
Yeah. So make sure you click the bell in Europe and put in your plans, and then work together to make sure that energy transition will be done by. When do we have carbon neutral ports, do you think?
Well, we have a climate neutrality target for the EU for 2050, minus 55 reduction target 2030, somewhere in between, no?
Okay. So bright future ahead.
Well, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you for the both of you for joining us here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.